All right, welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely.
Awesome. Today we're going to take a close look at Apple's brand new iMac with the M4 chip.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so whether you're thinking about buying one, maybe, or just really curious about the latest tech, stick with us, and by the end of this, you'll have all the info you need to really impress your friends, Russ.
Yeah.
We're basing this deep dive on a fantastic review we found from TechWise Corner. It's a really well-respected tech blog.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, they know their stuff. And this review was published just a few days ago, January 20, 2025. So we're working with the latest intel here.
Fresh off the press.
Exactly. So let's dive right in. Now, the review really raves about the M4 chip, calling it a true game changer.
The M4 chip is, it really is the heart of this machine. It's
Yeah.
making some serious waves.
What is it about this chip that makes it so different, like compared to the previous generations?
Well, just for starters, it's got an 8-core CPU and an 8-core GPU, which basically means you're going to see a pretty noticeable performance boost in just about everything you do, right?
Oh,
Yeah, imagine editing 4K video with zero lag or multitasking, like with a ton of apps open,
Yeah.
and still everything's running super smoothly.
so you're saying it's not just about like raw speed, but it's a totally different experience.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just for like hardcore techies or anything, even like everyday stuff like web browsing
Right.
or working on documents. It's all going to feel a lot faster.
I can definitely appreciate that. Now, the review also talked about the iMac's display. They called it a visual feast. Is it really that good?
It's pretty incredible, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're talking about a 24-inch Retina display
Okay.
with an insane resolution, like 4480 by 2520,
Yeah.
and support for over 1 billion colors.
Wow, that's a lot of colors.
It's really something else. And you know what's really neat?
It's that.
They've got this true tone technology
Okay.
that actually adjusts the color temperature of the display to match the ambient light in your room.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, so if you're working late at night, your eyes won't get as strained.
Oh, that's a lifesaver. Now, let's talk about the design because this iMac is super sleek.
Oh, yeah.
And I gotta say, that blue color is pretty bold.
It definitely makes a statement.
It does, but it's not just about looks, right?
Right.
Apple's known for that minimalist design philosophy.
Totally. They really focus on simplicity. Like, there's just one power cable. That's it.
Wow.
No more messy cords everywhere. And, of course, you get the magic keyboard and the magic mouse. So everything just works together perfectly.
You know, that level of integration is pretty impressive, but some people might say it like locks users even further into the Apple ecosystem.
That's a fair point. I mean, it really depends on what the user's looking for.
Yeah.
Some people love that seamless experience. They're happy to stay within the Apple world. But others might prefer to have, a bit more flexibility.
For sure. Now, the review also highlighted some pretty big improvements to the audio and video.
Oh, what's
through
those?
there.
Well, you've got a 6-speaker sound system now with Dolby Atmos support.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's perfect for, watching movies or listening to music
Right.
or even gaming. And then on the video side, they've upgraded to a 1080p FaceTime HD camera,
Nice.
which when you combine that with the M4 chip's image signal processor,
Mhm.
it means you're going to look really sharp on video calls, even if the lighting isn't great.
That's a huge plus, especially with so much remote work and video calls these days.
It's essential.
It really is. Now, before we get carried away with all the bells and whistles, let's talk about how this iMac fits into that bigger Apple ecosystem.
Right.
Because if you're already using, an iPhone, an iPad, maybe even an Apple Watch,
Yeah.
this iMac seems to really integrate seamlessly.
It does. Features like continuity and handoff, they make it super easy to switch between all your Apple devices.
Really?
Yeah, like you can start working on something on your iPhone and then just pick it up right where you left off on your iMac.
Yeah. That is impressive. But I guess that also makes it harder to, switch to a different ecosystem later on, right?
Yeah, there's always that trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Apple's really good at creating this user-friendly, convenient ecosystem.
Right.
But it can make it, a bit harder to leave if you ever wanted to.
Something to think about for sure. Now, let's flip the coin here.
Okay.
Are there any downsides to all this sleekness and power? The review did mention some concerns about upgradability.
Yeah, that is one of the compromises you make with this iMac.
Okay.
So the RAM, which is 16 GB, and the 256 GB SSD, they're both soldered onto the motherboard,
Okay.
which means you can't really upgrade them later on.
So you're stuck with what you buy initially.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that could be a problem, right? Especially for professionals who work with large files.
Exactly. Imagine you're a video editor
Right.
and you suddenly run out of storage. then you're forced to rely on external hard drives or
Yeah.
cloud storage, which,
Yeah.
adds extra costs, and
Yeah.
it can really slow down your workflow.
That makes the buying decision a lot more complex.
It does.
It's not just about the upfront cost. It's about like what you might need down the road.
Exactly. If you think you might need more storage
Right.
or more RAM in the future, then you might want to think about getting a higher-end model right from the start.
So you don't run into those issues later.
Right.
That's a really good point. And speaking of cost, I mean, let's be honest, this iMac comes with a pretty hefty price tag.
It does. There's no denying that. And yeah, the performance and the design, they're amazing.
Yeah.
But you can find similar specs for less money from other brands. So
Yeah.
the question is, how much is the Apple brand worth to you?
Yeah.
How much do you value that seamless ecosystem and the overall user experience?
Because you are definitely paying a premium for that Apple experience.
You are.
But for some users, that might be worth it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about finding that balance between
Yeah.
your needs and your budget and your priorities.
There's no right or wrong answer. It depends on the person. And even if you're willing to splurge a little, there are a couple other things to consider.
Okay.
Like the limited ports on this iMac.
Oh, yeah, the age-old dilemma of form versus function.
Right.
The base model only has 2 Thunderbolt USB 4 ports,
Okay.
which they are super versatile,
Right.
but it's still not a lot for people who use a lot of different peripherals.
Especially for like professionals, right?
Yeah.
Who might need to connect to all sorts of things.
Exactly.
And even though the higher end models have extra USB 3 ports, they still left out an SD card slot and an HDMI port.
Which is a bit of a surprise.
It is, especially for creative professionals,
Yeah.
who often work with cameras and external displays.
Yeah, it seems like dongles and adapters might be unavoidable.
It's funny, right? Those little dongles can become such a big deal.
They really can.
They can really make or break your workflow.
They can.
So we've covered a lot here, from that super powerful M4 chip to the downsides of limited upgradability
Yeah.
and those ports. So what does it all mean for the average user? Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive,
All right.
where we're going to explore what this technology really means for the future of computing.
Very cool.
And we'll help you decide if this iMac is the right fit for your digital life.
Can't wait.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into the iMac with that M4 chip.
Back for more.
Yes, so we've talked about all the specs, all the features, but I really want to kind of step back and look at the bigger picture here,
Okay.
What does this new technology actually mean for the future of computing? Like, is this a big deal?
Well, the TechWise Corner review called the M4 chip a paradigm shift.
Oh, wow.
And I think they're right.
Really?
Yeah, it's not just like a little upgrade. It's like a whole new way of thinking about how we interact with computers.
Oh, okay, that sounds pretty dramatic. Can you kind of break that down for me?
Sure. So think about the neural engine in this M4 chip, right?
Yeah.
It's incredibly powerful, and it opens up all these crazy possibilities for AI-driven applications. Like imagine just using your voice to control your iMac, or having it like predict what you need before you even ask.
Right.
Or even like generating content based on your input.
That's kind of blowing my mind a little bit.
It's pretty wild. And it's not just limited to AI either.
Really?
The M4 chip also is going to allow for these like more immersive experiences, things like augmented reality and virtual reality.
Oh, wow.
Like imagine using your iMac to design a 3D model, and then you can like manipulate it in real time, or like attending a virtual meeting where it actually feels like you're in the room with everyone.
That is next level.
Oh,
Okay, but let's bring it back down to earth for a second. How is all this going to impact like the average user just in their daily life?
Well, I mean, think about how much technology has already changed our lives in the past, 10 years? Like we have more power in our pockets now than ever before.
Right.
And all these trends, they're only going to accelerate.
So you're saying we're going to see even more powerful devices,
Oh, yeah.
smarter software, and everything's just going to be seamlessly connected.
Exactly, like all your gadgets just talking to each other.
It's kind of exciting, but also a little bit scary, right?
It is a bit of a double-edged sword, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, it's super convenient, but it also makes us more reliant on these devices, right?
Yeah, very true. But like we talked about earlier, there are those downsides, like the lack of upgradability and maybe getting locked into that Apple ecosystem. And we got to think about the environmental impact of all these new gadgets, right?
Absolutely. Those are all important factors to consider. Like, it's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Yeah.
We have to be mindful of the long-term implications of all this technology,
Right. So how do we balance, the benefits with the potential risks?
That's the big question.
Yeah,
And there's no easy answer, but I think being aware of those potential downsides is a good first step,
definitely. Now, I'm still kind of hung up on that whole lack of ports thing.
Yeah.
It seems like a step backward in terms of, like, practicality.
Yeah, it's definitely a head scratcher, especially for
Mhm.
their target audience. Like, professionals and creatives, they need those extra ports.
Exactly. Like, who doesn't use an SD card or an HDMI cable these days?
Yeah, you'd think those would be standard.
It's almost like they're forcing us into this dongle-filled future, which nobody wants.
Well, maybe they're betting on everything going wireless, right?
That's true.
Like keyboards, mice, even external drives and displays.
Mhm.
It's all becoming wireless.
That's a good point. And to be fair, those Thunderbolt ports, they are pretty amazing.
They are super versatile,
They can handle a lot.
like data transfer, charging, video output.
It's like the one port to rule them all.
But there's still something to be said for just having those dedicated ports.
Yeah, it's just simple and reliable.
No adapters, no wireless connectivity issues.
So it's a trade-off. You gain sleekness and minimalism, but you might lose a little convenience and flexibility.
You do.
And it's a gamble on Apple's part, right?
Yeah. It is.
Will people really embrace this wireless future, or are they going to miss those ports?
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Now, one thing the TechWise Corner review did highlight was Apple's commitment to sustainability, which is a good thing.
It is. It's great to see a big company like Apple taking that seriously.
For sure.
Like, the M4 chip is super energy efficient, which is good for the planet and good for your wallet. Right?
Exactly. It's not just about saving a few bucks on your energy bill.
Right.
It's about making choices that are good for the environment. And it seems like more and more people are starting to care about that.
They are, and companies are starting to notice, which is a good thing.
Absolutely. And it's not just about energy efficiency. Apple's also using recycled materials in their products. They're cutting down on packaging waste.
They're even trying to be carbon neutral across their entire supply chain.
Which is huge. Like, that's a massive undertaking.
It is, but it shows that they're really committed to making a difference.
And it sets a good example for other companies, right?
Hopefully it'll inspire other companies to step up their game.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about the amazing features of this new iMac. We debated the pros and cons. We even talked about the ethics of all this new tech.
We've really gone deep.
We have. But the big question is this iMac worth it? Is it right for you?
The ultimate question.
Yes. And that's what we're going to tackle in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
So stay tuned. We're going to wrap everything up and help you make sense of all this new technology and figure out if this iMac is right for your digital life.
Sounds good.
Okay, welcome back to the final part of our iMac deep dive with the M4 chip.
The moment of truth.
It is. So we've gone over like all the specs, debated the pros and cons, and talked about what this all means for the future.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
But now I think it's time to really focus on you, the listener.
Okay.
Is this iMac worth the investment? Like, is this something you should actually buy?
That's the big question. And honestly, there isn't a simple yes or no answer.
Right.
As we talked about, it depends on your needs, your priorities, your budget, all those things.
So let's break it down. Who is this iMac perfect for? Like, who should be running out to buy this right now?
Well, if you're like a die-hard Apple fan, you know someone who always wants the latest and greatest tech.
Okay.
This iMac is probably calling your name.
Especially if you're already using like a bunch of other Apple devices.
Yeah, if you're deep in that Apple ecosystem,
Yeah.
you're going to love the seamless experience this iMac offers.
What about people who are all about performance? Like, they need the most powerful machine they can get.
The M4 chip is a beast. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So for creative professionals, video editors, graphic designers, anyone who needs that raw power, this iMac is a game changer.
But we've also talked about the downsides. Like, you can't upgrade it later. You're kind of stuck with what you buy.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So how should people think about that?
You got to be honest with yourself about what you need now and in the future.
Okay.
If you're someone who thinks you might need more RAM or storage down the line, then this might not be the best choice.
Unless you're okay with relying on external drives or cloud storage.
Right, and that adds extra cost and hassle.
So it's a bigger decision than just like looking at the price tag, right?
It is. You really need to think long term.
Okay, so for those who might not be sold on this iMac, what are some alternatives? Like, what else is out there?
Well, there are definitely competitors offering similar specs and performance, often at a lower price.
But you're not getting that Apple experience, right?
Exactly. You're not getting that seamless integration, the design, that intuitive software, all those things.
So that really comes down to what you value, right?
It does. Some people are happy to pay a premium for that Apple
For
magic.
sure.
Others might prioritize practicality and saving money.
And there's no wrong answer.
Nope, it's all about what works for you.
Okay, so we've talked about the hardware, the price, but what about the software? Like, what's it like using macOS on this iMac?
macOS is known for being really user-friendly and reliable. And with that M4 chip, it's blazing fast.
Yeah.
But one thing to keep in mind is that macOS is a closed ecosystem.
What does that mean?
So you're limited to using apps that are designed for macOS.
So if you need specific Windows software, you're out of luck.
Pretty much, yeah. So compatibility is something to really think about.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one big takeaway you want listeners to remember?
I think the biggest thing is that technology is always changing. And this iMac is a perfect example of that.
It really is. It's like a glimpse into the future.
It is. But with any new technology, it's important to weigh the pros and cons and decide if it's the right fit for you.
It's about finding the best tool for the job. And that tool might be this amazing new iMac, or it might be something else entirely.
Exactly.
The important thing is to be informed and make choices that work for you.
Well said.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the iMac with the M4 chip. Hopefully you learned a few things along the way.
I hope so.
And remember, whether you decide to buy this iMac or not, the future of tech is looking pretty exciting.
It is.
So stay curious, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.
See you then.